All right, hello and welcome everyone to Sutron Global exclusive webinar with our special guest speaker. Again, this is the Mining Enterprise Business Intelligence, Another Role for InfoPros Part 2, and we're very excited for this one. We're so thankful that everybody came, and without further ado, I'll introduce everybody. We have Michael Hughes, who's coming to us from our London, UK office. Myself, Tanya Anderson, who's coming to us from Vancouver, BC. And we have our special guest, who I'm sure you all know, who's coming to us from California. Michael, if you wouldn't take it away.
Sure, thank you, Tanya. Just a very brief introduction to set the scene for you. We do have a large number of clients and also a good number of returning attendees today, but for anyone that is new, because we do have a record attendance today, Sutron Global is a cloud-based library, knowledge and information management solution provider dedicated to managing library transformation. So the way in which we do that is evidenced on the next screen, where you can see details of some of the solutions that we provide to our clients. At the core of what we offer is our ILS, or our Library Information Management System, which is incredibly flexible. It will manage print, it will manage digital, and all other manner of information resources that you may work with in your own organization. And we also now offer a discovery platform to offer a one-stop search of all of your online database and online journal collections, as well as having solutions around archive, digital assets, which is what we're thinking about and talking about today, and also elements of KM and skills database. So if we just move through to the next slide, part of this, the reason that we're here today is a part of this program that we put on to support the information professionals that we engage with on a daily basis. So we are sponsoring this series of educational webinars. It's been running for several weeks now. As I say, the attendance is growing week by week, so we're very pleased with the response there and the feedback that we're receiving. But in addition to this series, we're also offering financial assistance for onboarding with our platforms that you saw on the previous slide there. So if anybody wants to ask more about that, and if any existing clients want to ask what's available and possible for us to help them, then please reach out. You can see just how to do that on the next slide. We have 3 different ways that you can reach with us and connect with us via our website, our Twitter feed, which is very active, and we're on top of constantly trying to keep information out of relevance for people. And also on LinkedIn, you'll find us there. So without too much further ado, let me just hand it back to Tanya, and she will introduce our guest speaker today. Thank you, Tanya.
Thanks, Michael. So as I'm sure you're all aware, our guest speaker today is the amazing Deb Hunt. She is the library director at the Mechanics Institute and the principal of Information Edge. So without further ado, Deb, please take it away.
Thanks, Tanya, and thanks Sutron Global for having me here today, and welcome everybody. So as I promised in part 1 of this webinar, I said I'll go to the next slide, okay? Please, thank you. I promised that I would share 2 case studies. The first case study is about maintaining the status quo, hoping employees can find relevant information when they need it. The second case study is about an organization that took the high road to leverage search technology to connect workers with the knowledge they needed to get their work done and to grow the company. So the first one's a US federal government agency, and the second is an environmental engineering firm. Next slide, please. So I kid you not that this actually isn't nearly as bad as what I saw on several floors of a federal agency that shall remain anonymous. I never thought I'd want a spy camera, but this was one instance where I wish I'd had one. When 2 of my colleagues and I, who were hoping to partner on this project, came through the departments of this agency, and it had several floors in a large building, staff were ecstatic to learn why we were there. Though what we saw and learned shocked us and inspired us to transform their piles of paper, folders, and images into actionable knowledge. Unfortunately, this federal agency did not hire us. Instead, they decided to hire a scanning company to scan all of the documents and then rely on staff searching through tens of thousands and maybe even millions of pages of text to find what they needed. There was no plan for deduplication, no plan to create a metadata schema and a taxonomy, a retention plan, or any of that. It was pretty horrible. And truly, this agency is out of compliance with federal regulations due to their inability to get their hands on documents and knowledge they need to do their work and provide a safe environment for those of us in the United States. So it was very shocking to see this, and really pretty horrible that they did not choose a good solution. So let's go on to the second case study, which is a successful one that I'd like to share. So I was approached by senior management of this environmental engineering firm to find a solution to getting their corporate library organized. But once I met with them and learned more about the company, I suggested that they think much bigger and include organizing and making accessible their increasing corpus of documents, images, and other internal resources. The manager I was working with, who was a family-run company, but they were growing quite fast, and was one of the family members, second generation, she took it to their board, and they invited me to present about my vision. They were really excited and asked me to write a proposal for this much larger project, which I did. But right after that meeting, and before I wrote the proposal, the senior vice president took me to his office to see his personal organizational system. I wish I had a picture of what I saw. Here was this beautiful corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows, a large desk, a very plush office chair, and many other lovely furnishings. But piled all over the floor were stacks of folders and documents that they were so tall they defied gravity. And you have to remember, I live in earthquake country, so that was worrisome to me. There were some 20 of these piles. I think he wanted to see my reaction as he explained to me his system of organization and how it all lived in his head. He was planning to retire in the next 6 months and wanted to be sure that all that he had was captured and available to others via some sort of search mechanism. I assured him I could do this. I have to admit, on the long drive home, I mulled over all that he had in his office and how I could possibly bring order to the chaos. But then I reminded myself that I could do this. And I did. After figuring out all the information and knowledge streams in the organization, what end users wanted and needed, and how they worked, I began to devise a plan that included staffing needs, software requirements, how to organize the explicit knowledge and capture the tacit knowledge, and more. I didn't do it alone, though. I hired the right folks to work with me, from a traditional cataloger to organize the library, to an administrative assistant to cull through many, many filing cabinets of print documents and also digital documents to find the legal or final versions. Often there'd be 10 or 20 copies of the same document. What really made it all come together was that the firm had its annual all-staff meeting about 2 months into the project. The board asked me to present at this meeting and to share about the project and why all staff should buy in and be a part of it. I had just 20 minutes on their jam-packed day schedule. At first, I could see that the staff were politely listening, but as I focused on why this was going to make their work and lives easier, they really sat up and paid attention. There were great questions and comments, and it ended up being a 40-minute slot due to their input and buy-in. It turned out to be a very successful project, and they hired a part-time librarian and also an administrative assistant to work together to continue the organization and access to their knowledge base. So what started out as a library automation project turned into a total solution to find externally produced and internally produced information using one ILS system. So remember, a lot of this knowledge was going to walk out the door with the senior vice president. So there was a lot of tacit knowledge, and there was also much explicit knowledge that was in documents and images and many other things. All right, so let's go on to the next slide, please. So how did this happen? How did this work out? So I want to dive a bit deeper to explain to you and about how you can replicate this sort of successful project, either as a consultant or as an employee. Grassroots support is really important because change is hard, but funding comes from the top down. That said, User buy-in on all levels is essential for a system or new policies and procedures to be into place and to be successful. But you do need to get senior buy-in, executive suite buy-in, the C-suite, CEO, CFO, CIO, whoever it might be, so that cross-organizational buy-in will follow. And this is your sponsor. And then you also want to remember to partner with IT. You know, several years ago when I would go into a project and I would approach IT about, you know, I always wanted to connect with them and get their buy-in and support because I knew it would be a partnership. I would often get the response was, well, we don't need you. We know what we're doing. But over the last 8 years or so, they've realized that they are being asked to do a lot of things that are not really in their sweet spot. It might be knowledge management. It could be integrated library software. It could be many different things. And so I found that it's really crucial to partner with them. And sometimes they can be a little prickly because they see somebody coming into their turf. I say cultivate those relationships. Can't ask them out for a cup of tea or coffee now, but think of ways that you can partner with them and let them know how you're going to make their life easier. And what I found is that once they know that, they're like, oh, we're so glad you're here, because they're being asked to do a lot of this and they don't know how to do it or don't have the bandwidth. So next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about actually doing the project. So first of all, you want to do a knowledge audit or assessment. That means talking to staff on different levels and in different departments and even different locations of an organization. Both one-on-one, small focus groups, and larger meetings all have value to gather data. And what's really great is often they'll say, you really need to talk to, and then they'll name somebody and that you haven't thought to connect with. And you'll learn where their pain points are, how they find or don't find what they need, and how frustrated they are. Ask them, but don't promise what the ideal solution would be for them. And when reporting your findings to your high-level sponsor, be sure to explain what is needed and why, and do it in positive terms. Secondly, assess the organizational culture. What are the organization cultural norms? Are they top-down or are they spread throughout the organization? Cultural norms can be so pervasive that change is a real challenge. How do you overcome that? I would recommend that you start small. And I have a little saying that by small things are great things brought to pass. When one segment of an organization implements a solution successfully, others want to know how they can become part of it. Third, leverage information management best practices. You want to look at records management best practices, archives best practices, and others inside and outside the organization so you don't reinvent the wheel. Learn from the mistakes and successes of others. I guarantee it'll save you a lot of angst and also a lot of time. So what are the assets? Probably paper, probably digital, maybe some other things too. Sometimes there's realia. I've gone into firms, engineering firms or architectural firms where they actually have carpet samples or floor samples. There's all kinds of things that need to be organized. And they can be in lots of places or silos. And there's structured data and unstructured data. Remember, digital storage is really cheap now. So there often is a lot of stuff saved, a lot more stuff saved than it might have been if it was in a physical format in a filing cabinet. But it's so cheap, we can just keep saving copies of things or different versions of things. So ask yourself and those you work with, do we need to keep it? Do we need to keep it all? What are the parameters? And that leads to the next thing, the retention policy. There are likely legal implications of this. How long do you need to keep something? The organization's legal counsel can provide the information you need to create a retention schedule and have it comply with regulatory requirements. And retention is also driven by business requirements, cost of storage, and data privacy. And then recommending the best solution. You know, there's a lot of software out there in the enterprise content management, document management, knowledge management, digital asset management, and library worlds. It is important to remember that often open source software is not really free. It takes a lot of work to make it do what you want it to do. So I I can think of no projects where I've used open source software because even though up front it seems like it's a good deal, in the end you spend a lot more time and money getting it to do what you want it to do. And be aware of solutions that promise the moon. Create your business requirements before you start looking for solutions. So the question is not to say, what software should I buy? It should actually be, what are my requirements? And then start looking at the software. And then the last thing is you want to work with your vendor partners to see demos and demonstrations of what their software can do. And once and I wouldn't do that for every solution you're looking at. I would narrow down based on your business requirements, who meets your criteria. And then you want to have those vendor partners do some demonstrations for you, and you want them to be customized, not canned demos. And then you want to make sure that you have your stakeholders present to see those demonstrations so all of their questions can be answered. Okay, next slide, please. So other things to consider. Will this involve a portal on the intranet or even an extranet? And of course, today we have so many different ways to get information, but we want to make sure that proprietary or sensitive information is only available through layers of security, more than just a password. So that's something to really, username and password login. So you want to make sure you've looked at that. And will this be a licensed in-house solution or will it be a cloud solution? You need to look at what your support system is for either your client or your own organization. And often cloud is great, in-house is good. It just depends on the project and the organization. And then thinking about where will the funding come from? Remember that high-level sponsor, you want to be able to make sure that they've bought into this, so there will be funding. And then there's the whole project of building a metadata schema and taxonomy. A lot of times before we started this, Michael and Tanya and I were talking about Amazon. Amazon to me has the worst search engine in the world. And of course that's to get you to scroll through a lot of things to find and buy other things, but we don't want to do that in our organizations. We want people to be able to get right to what they want. And so it's really important to build a metadata schema and a taxonomy and a good search engine to find that information. And then you have to think about who's going to implement and maintain and update what you've created. So someone needs to be responsible for all of this and keep the momentum going, doing course correction, advocating for the system, making sure people are trained, new people coming on board are part of the system. So you have to ask who will take on the role of the corporate enterprise content manager or guru. Wouldn't you like to have that as your job title, the enterprise content guru? I think that's a great job title. And as a consultant, I stay involved, but not in the day-to-day operations. I always recommend that my clients hire new staff, both for during the project and for after I'm out of it. And I've learned to call that new staff person usually an information professional, and I recommend they hire somebody. And most of the time that happens. I'm still available for consultation, but I hand off the actual implementation and maintenance to this person and a team, including IT. So it's really important if you're doing consulting work to not just walk away, because oftentimes they say, oh, so-and-so will take care of that, or a team will take care of that. But as we know, when nobody is ultimately responsible for maintaining and making sure that something continues to be maintained and enhanced and training is done, then it tends to, all that work kind of falls by the wayside. So you want to make sure that it does continue on and gets even better. Next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit about the stuff that lives in people's heads, which is human capital. And this is really the stuff that people know in an organization that you can't just pluck out of the air, but that it lives in people's minds from their experience, their education. And this is really where an expert database, a skills database, or a knowledge database is a great solution. And you have to decide, is this going to be a separate or integrated piece of your enterprise-wide content management? And often what I have found is what a client or other staff want is a way to find someone in the organization who can tell her in 10 minutes or less what she needs to know to do her work. She doesn't want to read a few articles or even the value-added analysis we provide. She really wants to say, who is the point person I can go to get up to speed on this in 10 minutes? And I've had clients and staff who've, called and said, I've got a meeting in 30 minutes and I need to know this and this and this before I go into that meeting with this new client. Who can I talk to get up to speed? So that's the sort of, we want to be the person they call to ask about that. Okay, next slide, please. So the challenge is just beginning. You've done all these steps, you've got a solution in place. Now what? Well, there's alpha and beta testing need to happen, and you want to do it as much as possible. I would pilot the project, alpha and beta test it with a small group, and then as you learn what the weaknesses are and you fix those leaks, then roll it out to the organization, and that means lots of training and retraining. You want to revisit your strategies and what you're doing based on the testing and the training and the feedback that you get. And then you want to make changes to strategies and to retest. It's a continual cycle. And then you want to demonstrate business value and don't stop. You need to show that business value by measuring accomplishments and communicating them to management and enterprise-wide. You need to shout from the rooftops the fantastic value you and your expertise bring to the organization and how you make life easier for everyone. You'll be the knowledge guru in your organization and thought of first, not second or last, when those in command want solutions. And remember, it will never be a perfect system, but do keep at it. It will get better over time. You need persistence and perseverance, and they will pay off. It might not be easy, but it will definitely be worth it. Okay, next slide, please. So I'm all about making yourself indispensable. You need to innovate in the organization. Don't wait to be asked. I'm all about, I'll do that. Raise your hand. Do you hear that there's a challenge? Think about how you can do that. And those who have heard me speak before know I'm all about, if you feel that you're too busy, look at what you're doing and get rid of the stuff nobody else cares about. Do the stuff that makes a difference to others. We have to engage our clients on their terms and add value where we can. Do we have a very visible web and other online presence? Are we the innovators in our organizations to implement, model, and test strategic tools? When we are actually in an office, do we get up from our desk and walk around and talk to people? Do we pick up the phone and just check in to say, hey, here's something new I've got, thought you might be interested? We got to continually remind people because they are being bombarded with so many information streams. We want to make sure that they remember that we're going to give them the knowledge that they need, the actionable knowledge they need to do their work and to shine. We really need to be comfortable that we add value, maybe in ways that are new to us. We need to be agile enough to live in all the different worlds we live in today, the print, digital, and virtual worlds. And it doesn't mean you need to be an expert, but knowing enough to speak intelligently about these tools. Remember, you want to seek buy-in as a consultant or staff member. Be prepared to make your case. Have a 30-second pitch, a 60-second pitch, a 3-minute pitch, or maybe even a 30-minute pitch in your back pocket. You might get asked to go, I need you to come in by somebody in the C-suite. We've got this new project. I heard you can do this. How are you going to be prepared to present to that person and to let them know what you bring to the table? And so it's really important to let them see and demonstrate to them that we can positively affect the organization's bottom line. Okay, next one, please. So, do you ever feel like this? Well, think about this. Really, it's all about what's in it for me. Most organizations do not have a good way to leverage their institutional knowledge, so most staff are spinning their wheels. They have little or no control over their documents and intellectual capital, and we can help them. Knowledge professionals, that's us, are an asset in any organization, and more power will come to us if we take advantage of the opportunities that are there. Okay, next slide, please. So remember, this is all about lifelong learning. I'm sure some of you are like me who have been in this profession a long time. There might be others of you that are just getting started or maybe have moved over into this profession. But it's really important to remember that it pays to continually be positioning and repositioning ourselves for opportunities both inside and outside our organizations. We can't rest on our laurels or we'll be downsized, outsourced, or made obsolete. These are strong words, I know, but it's a call to action. We can no longer assume that what we do is perceived as valuable if it does not directly impact the bottom line of the organization and align with the objectives of that organization or our clients. So it's really important to think about what are the characteristics that you have. I bet all of you have some of this. Some of these are stronger for us. I tend to be a risk taker, but I also am a careful risk taker in that I'm prepared before I take any risks. Like when I go out and ride my bicycle, I make sure I have a helmet on and that I've got a light blinking in the back so people can see me, or if I get in a wreck, and I've been in bicycle accidents, that the damage won't be really bad. So think about how you what risks you're willing to take and how you prepare for those. How are you going to be a leader? How are you going to be perceived as a leader? How are you going to raise your hand and take that initiative and say, I can do that? And also remember to keep your sense of humor. I have found that when you do that, it does help, because we're in really tough times right now, and make sure you make time for play, something that resonates with you to relieve all the pressure that we have in our daily lives. Okay, next one, please. So here's your homework. What skills can you learn or hone to move in this into this direction? You know, as information professionals, we have a good solid footing from which to grow and develop new and expanded skills. Yes, we are all busy, but if we want to remain employable and moving forward, there are many opportunities to do so if we think outside the box and get moving. What skills can you learn or hone to move in this direction? How and when will you do this? Remember, if we don't write it down as a goal, it usually doesn't happen. Will you volunteer? Will you intern? There are mid-career internships. How will you do this at your current job? Will you take a class or get certified in something? I highly recommend, those of you that have known me for a long time, I always say invest in yourself. You may not have your current job tomorrow, next week, next month, or next year. You want to be prepared to be able to move on and be employable throughout your career. And so what skills, think about the skills you already have in your toolbox that you can use to begin these things, KM, ECM, DM, DAM in your organization, or include on your resume, in a cover letter, on your LinkedIn profile. And then I want you to think about putting this on your calendar. Choose a measurable goal and hold yourself to it. And maybe even do it with somebody else so you have a partner who will help to cheer you on and you can cheer them on. So just to wrap up, next slide, please. Here are some resources. The SLA CAM community is a great resource. AIM has some great resources as well. They have education, research, and best practices about finding, controlling, and optimizing information. And then there's 3 LinkedIn groups. I run the first one, the career sustainability one, but the thing is, I want to just tell you these links actually work, but what LinkedIn has done, they've changed the way the links work, is it will take you to the LinkedIn homepage. So you'll have to actually paste in these URLs to get to those groups. Even though those are the correct URLs, it doesn't take you there any longer. So lastly, I would just like to, next slide, show 2 resources that I highly recommend if you're interested in getting into knowledge management and knowledge services. Guy St. Clair, the godfather of knowledge services, has written these 2 amazing books. And if you're especially interested in kind of a step-by-step, the Knowledge Services Handbook is great. And there are so many good resources out there, but to me, these are the gold standard. So I hope what I've talked about today has been helpful to you. And I think I've gone over a little. I'm really enthusiastic about what we do and what we can do to bring value to our organizations and our clients. And I want to thank Sutron Global for allowing me to be here today.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Deb. I appreciate that. Some really interesting examples there and stories on the cases. So we will take a few questions if people would like to submit them and take advantage of Deb's expertise if they're able to. There is a questions facility to the right side of your screen, the GoToWebinar control panel. So please go ahead and punch them into there, and we'll field those as quickly and as best we can to Deb within the time we have. There is one there already that I will ask. Deb, you talked about, you shared about how there are many potential parallel careers for info pros, but how can somebody know which path to pursue?
Oh, well, okay. Well, I would say think about where your interests lie and your passion lies, because if you're going to pursue this, you're going to need to be passionate about it, because sometimes it can be a slog, as you know, to learn new things or even to sell these in your organization. So you want to be informed. And we know how to find information. I would look at SLAs, all their different communities that they have. I would look at AIIM. There's the Damn Guru site, which is really great. Sutron Global has a whole plethora of webinars that happened in the past. I didn't put up a slide for the librarian skill book, but that lists 51 skills, and it helps you to figure out which of those skills you might want to pursue and then how to do that. But really, the world is an opportunity waiting for us to go after it. And I just think depending on what your passion is about, think about which of those sound good to you. I mean, is it digital assets? Is it document management? Are you interested in the stuff that lives in people's heads, or skills databases? There's so many different ways to go. I've kind of danced through all of them and have enjoyed it very much. And the other thing I would say too is partner with somebody. If there's somebody that you know is really good, or you want to do informational interviews, that's a really great way too to talk to folks to see what it is they like or don't like about a particular thing, and that will help inform you as well.
That's good, thank you. So someone else is asking about whether you, on those previous or perhaps any other projects, had to build taxonomies, and what kind of approach did you take to that? Any tips or resources that you can recommend or share?
Oh yes, another book that is on my bookshelf here is The Accidental Taxonomist by Heather Hedden. I highly recommend it. It's a great book. I've marked it up and I've got little post-its sticking out of it. I bought that when she first published it, and it's still very relevant today. There are taxonomy building software, but I have found for the most part that what's worked when I've worked in partnership with others is we've used a spreadsheet. And we have just built it out from there, you know, starting with the top level and then all of the different aspects of each of those taxonomy terms. You want to make sure too that you have a metadata schema to go along with that, so that you'll know where you're going to plug those terms in, and have all of the other things that will make those assets findable and searchable, so that there's less frustration at getting at assets that people need to do their work. Hope that helps.
Yeah, me too. Thanks ever so much, Deb. I think we'll call it there in the interest of time. I will hand it back to Tanya just to close us out. But thanks so much, Deb. I certainly appreciated the cases that you shared with us there. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you again, everybody, for joining us. If you'd like, as Michael mentioned at the beginning, you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and we also have our YouTube channel where you can watch all of the different webinars that Deb and our other lady Joan have been putting together. So feel free to go visit those. We'll be updating everything shortly. We do have an extra session that's already scheduled. We're looking at September 15th right now to let everybody get settled in after the start of September. But again, thank you everyone for attending. We love having you here. If you have any questions, please feel free to email us, and visit sutronglobal.com. We've got lots of blogs up there, the postings of all the webinars that Joan mentioned, or sorry, Deb mentioned, with Guy St. Clair included in there, and Deb herself. And so please visit us, and we look forward to seeing everybody next time. Take care, everyone. Stay safe, and we'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.